The moment you stop explaining yourself, people start listening. Strange, right? Most men spend years doing the opposite. They explain their choices, their decisions, their boundaries, their feelings. And without realizing it, they slowly give away their power. Imagine this. You tell someone you can't make it tonight. Instead of ending the conversation there, you start explaining. You talk about work, your schedule, your stress, your responsibilities. You keep adding details, trying to make them understand, trying to make them approve, trying to avoid conflict. But something unexpected happens. The more you explain, the weaker your position feels. Because deep down, you are asking for permission. And people can sense it. That's the dangerous part. Most men think explanations create respect. Often, they create the opposite. Think about the people you admire. The strongest man in the room. The respected leader. The confident entrepreneur. The man everyone notices when he walks in. How often does he over-explain himself? Almost never. Not because he's rude. Not because he doesn't care. Because he understands something most men never learn. Your life does not need constant justification. The need to explain comes from fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of judgment. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being misunderstood. And fear is expensive. Every time you explain yourself unnecessarily, you send a silent message. I'm not fully confident in my own decision. People hear that message even when you never say the words. Let's go deeper. Imagine you're dating someone. She asks why you didn't reply immediately. Many men panic. They launch into a long explanation. I was busy. My phone died. I had meetings. I was driving. They keep talking. Trying to prove innocence. Trying to avoid tension. But attraction works differently. Confidence doesn't rush to defend itself. Confidence stays calm. A simple answer often carries more strength. I was busy. That's it. No courtroom. No defense speech. No emotional scrambling. Because the strongest position is not always saying more. Sometimes it's saying less. Here's where most men get trapped. They confuse communication with justification. Communication is healthy. Justification is dependence. One comes from strength. The other comes from insecurity. There's a massive difference. A confident man can explain when necessary. But he doesn't explain because he's afraid. He explains because he chooses to. That distinction changes everything. Look at successful people. When they make a decision, criticism follows. Always. Someone disagrees. Someone complains. Someone judges. Someone gets offended. Yet they keep moving. Why? Because they understand an uncomfortable truth. If you spend your life trying to make everyone understand you, you'll never have time to become who you're supposed to be. Read that again. Most men are exhausted. Not from work. Not from responsibilities. Not from pressure. They're exhausted from managing other people's opinions. They're constantly explaining. Constantly defending. Constantly seeking approval. And approval is a bottomless pit. No matter how much you feed it, it's never enough. Here's a story. A man decides to start going to the gym. His friends question him. He explains. Then he changes his diet. More questions. More explanations. Then he starts building a business. People doubt him. More explanations. Then he stops partying every weekend. More explanations. Years pass. And he realizes something. The people demanding explanations were never going to support him anyway. They weren't looking for understanding. They were looking for access. Access to his confidence. Access to his energy. Access to his attention. The moment he stopped explaining, everything changed. The noise got quieter. The progress got louder. Most men don't realize this. Explanations invite negotiations. Boundaries end negotiations. And boundaries create respect. Imagine someone asks you to do something. You don't want to do it. You say no, they push back. Now you're uncomfortable. So, you start explaining. You list reasons. You defend your decision. You try to make them happy. Suddenly your no becomes a debate. Your boundary becomes a discussion. And your confidence starts leaking away. But what happens when you simply say, "No, I can't do that"? Silence. Most people aren't prepared for that level of certainty. Because certainty is rare. Especially today. We live in a world where everyone is seeking validation. Posting for approval. Speaking for approval. Living for approval. But the men who stand out, they operate differently. They don't need everyone to agree. They don't need everyone to understand. They don't need everyone to approve. And that's exactly why people respect them. Here's another truth most men never hear. Over-explaining often comes from guilt. You feel guilty for choosing yourself. Guilty for protecting your time. Guilty for setting boundaries. Guilty for pursuing your goals. Guilty for saying no, so you explain. You hope your explanation removes the guilt. It never does. Because guilt isn't solved through explanations. It's solved through self-respect. The moment you truly respect your own priorities, you stop apologizing for them. Something interesting happens when you stop explaining yourself. People reveal who they really are. Supportive people accept your decision. Controlling people challenge it. Respectful people understand boundaries. Manipulative people demand access. And suddenly, you can see clearly. That's powerful. Because clarity is impossible when you're constantly defending yourself. Think about the strongest season of your life. The season where you grew the most. The season where you leveled up. There's a good chance you became quieter. More focused. Less reactive. Less concerned with convincing people. Because growth requires energy. And explaining yourself consumes energy. A lot of it. Every unnecessary defense. Every unnecessary argument. Every unnecessary justification. It's all draining resources from your mission. And most men don't notice until years later. The strongest men aren't always louder. They're often calmer. More deliberate. More selective with words. They understand something valuable. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes silence communicates more power than 1,000 words. That doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It doesn't mean ignoring people. It means trusting yourself enough to stop seeking permission. That's the difference. A man who trusts himself doesn't need constant validation. He knows his values. He knows his direction. He knows his purpose. And when people disagree, he listens. He considers. Then he decides. Without panic. Without fear. Without endless explanations. Because confidence isn't proving yourself. Confidence is knowing yourself. The next time someone questions your decision, pause. Notice the urge. The urge to explain. The urge to justify. The urge to convince. Then ask yourself one question. Am I explaining because it helps? Or because I'm afraid? That question can change your life. Because the need to explain is often hiding a deeper problem. A lack of trust in your own judgment. And the moment you solve that problem, everything shifts. Your presence changes. Your energy changes. Your relationships change. Your standards change. People begin treating you differently. Not because you demanded respect. Because your behavior started communicating it. The truth is simple. You don't need everyone to understand your journey. You don't need everyone to approve your choices. You don't need everyone to agree with your boundaries. The people who belong in your life will respect them. The people who don't will fight them. And that tells you everything you need to know. Real power begins when you stop explaining yourself to people who were never listening in the first place. Stay calm. Stay focused. Stay disciplined. And remember this. The strongest man isn't the one who can explain himself to everyone. It's the man who no longer feels the need to.